Manchester is a city shaped by cotton. Starting in the late 1700s, massive new mills filled with cotton machines began producing textiles on a scale never seen before. The cotton trade created entirely new ways of life. It generated incredible wealth for some and drew thousands seeking opportunity. And through it all, cotton shaped how the city grew and what Manchester would become. While researching the cotton-making process of the 1850s, I was absolutely amazed by how interesting this process was. And I'm grateful that AI has allowed me to bring my research to life visually so you can see it too. Let's talk about how raw cotton actually made its journey to Manchester's mills. By the mid-19th century, nearly all the raw cotton feeding Manchester's industry came from American plantations in the Deep South, where millions of enslaved people laboured to grow and pick it. Massive quantities of cotton bales were compressed and shipped across the Atlantic to Britain, arriving at the port of Liverpool just 35 miles from Manchester. In the 1830s, the Liverpool and Manchester Railway opened as the world's first intercity railway line. This railway was built largely to speed up the cotton trade, and it worked brilliantly. Steam-powered trains could haul raw cotton from Liverpool docks to Manchester in under 2 hours, a trip that previously took 12 hours by canal boat. The very first train to arrive at Manchester's Liverpool Road station carried 18 wagon loads of cotton bales from Liverpool. But this booming cotton economy had a dark side. The white gold flowing into Manchester was produced by enslaved people suffering half a world away. By 1860, American plantations supplied almost 90% of the cotton processed in Manchester and surrounding mill towns. Innovation and profit in Manchester were deeply entangled with exploitation on a global scale. It's sobering to remember that the bustling cotton markets and clattering mills were built on a foundation of human misery. However, once the cotton bales arrived, they were unloaded into warehouses around the rail depots. Standing on a Manchester platform in the 1850s, you would have seen porters rolling heavy cotton bales off train wagons, the air thick with cotton dust even before the bales reached the mills. This was the first step in a global supply chain, connecting cotton fields in the American South to the factory yards of northern England. Now that the cotton is in the city, let's step inside a Manchester cotton mill to see how those raw fibres were transformed into finished fabric. It's like a vast brick building, multiple stories high, filled wall to wall with machinery. The din is overwhelming. Hundreds of leather drive belts whir overhead, shafts and wheels turning, metal gears clanking in constant motion. Floors vibrate from the power of steam engines in the basement driving the machines above. Workers, including men, women and children, move through the aisles with practiced efficiency, shouting to be heard over the noise. The production process began with cleaning and preparing the raw cotton. Machines with spiked rollers tore apart the compressed bales to fluff up the cotton and remove dirt. Next came carding machines, which combed the cotton fibres into a loose rope-like form called a sliver. Workers, often young women, tended the carding and drawing frames, clearing jams and piecing together broken slivers of cotton. From there, the rovings were ready for spinning. Spinning was the heart of the mill's activity. On an upper floor, rows of spinning mules extended as far as the eye could see. A spinning mule was an ingenious machine that could stretch and spin dozens of threads at once. The mule had sets of spindles on a moving carriage that would draw out the rovings and twist them into yarn as the carriage moved back and forth. A skilled male spinner typically oversaw one pair of mules, with several assistants called piecers, often teenage boys or girls, helping him. Their job was to monitor the thousands of threads and quickly repair any that broke by hand, literally piecing the thread ends back together. Meanwhile, beneath the spinning machines, small children called scavengers darted back and forth, picking up cotton fluff and debris that fell to the floor. It was incredibly dangerous work. Scavengers had to crawl under the heavy machinery while it was running, since stopping the machines for cleaning would cut into production. Many suffered injuries from the moving parts. The atmosphere in a spinning room was hot and humid. Mill owners kept the temperature high, often 27 to 29 degrees Celsius, and maintained humidity by wetting the floors, because cotton thread spun more smoothly in warm, moist air. Workers would be dripping with sweat as they moved among the machines. The air was also filled with floating lint fibres. Many workers, breathing this cotton dust day after day, developed respiratory problems. Despite the hardship, these labourers, some as young as 10 years old, kept their machines running from early morning until evening, typically from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. with only short breaks. After spinning, the resulting cotton yarn was wound onto bobbins and taken to the weaving department. Now, that's where the final magic happens, turning thread into cloth. In a weaving shed, power looms stood in long rows, each operated by a weaver, frequently women. By the 1850s, power looms were steam-driven and had largely replaced hand weaving. Dozens or even hundreds of looms would clatter in unison, the floors shaking with their motion. Each loom rapidly interlaced the warp thread stretched lengthwise with the weft thread, shooting back and forth to weave fabric. A single weaver might attend 2 or more looms at once, watching for broken threads or snags. The noise in a weaving hall was so loud that workers often resorted to lip reading or hand signals to communicate. By the end of this journey inside the mill, bolts of finished cotton cloth were ready to be sold. But the cloth didn't leave the mill looking the way we imagine it. Fresh off the looms, it was stiff, rough, and a dull yellow grey. Much of it was sent next to bleaching works, where it was washed again and again until it turned bright white, then dyed in bold colours or fed through printing shops where heavy rollers stamped flowers, stripes and patterns onto the fabric. Only then did this cotton become the finished cloth people wore, traded and shipped from Manchester to the rest of the world. With mountains of cotton cloth piling up in the warehouses, Manchester's products reached the rest of the world. By the 1850s, Manchester had evolved not only into an industrial production centre, but also into the commercial heart of the global cotton trade. Along Portland Street, Princess Street and Whitworth Street, grand warehouse buildings rose up, imposing multi-storey structures where cotton goods were stored, displayed and traded. The most famous gathering place was the Royal Exchange. This splendid hall in downtown Manchester functioned as the nerve centre of the cotton industry's commerce. Twice a week on market days, thousands of manufacturers, merchants and brokers would converge on the Royal Exchange floor. They came to make deals. Mill owners brought samples of their cloth, merchants came to buy wholesale lots, and agents negotiated orders for export. By the 1830s, cotton textiles accounted for about 50% of Britain's exports by value. In the crowd at the exchange, you might hear a dozen languages and dialects and businessmen from London, Liverpool, Glasgow, or as far away as New York, all drawn by the Manchester's cotton. It must have been an incredible sight. A single room, packed elbow to elbow with men in frock coats bargaining over huge quantities of cloth, each bolt of fabric ultimately destined for some distant market. Once sold, the finished goods needed to be shipped out. The same Liverpool and Manchester Railway that brought in raw cotton also worked in reverse. Trains carried carloads of finished textiles from Manchester back to the port of Liverpool for export. At Liverpool Road Station, one could see freight wagons being loaded with bales of cloth and crates of goods, ready to make the journey to the docks. In Liverpool's harbour, cotton goods from Manchester were loaded onto steamships bound for the markets of the British Empire and beyond. By the late 1850s, a piece of Manchester cotton could travel via steamship to ports in India or China in a matter of weeks. Manchester's textiles also went by rail and sea to continental Europe, to Africa, where inexpensive Manchester cottons were exchanged for palm oil and other commodities, and to the Americas. The global reach of made-in-Manchester cloth was truly unprecedented. By the 1880s, Lancashire, with Manchester as its commercial hub, was producing around 80% of the world's cotton cloth. Even in the mid-19th century, millions of yards of fabric flowed out of Manchester each year. The wealth generated was astonishing, enough to fund the construction of Manchester's grand civic buildings, its banks, its merchants' mansions, and cultural institutions. At the same time, the human cost on both ends of the supply chain was immense, from the enslaved people on plantations to the overworked weavers and child labourers in the mills. Manchester's story in the 1850s is one of innovation and global connectivity, but also one that forces us to remember those whose suffering underpinned the cotton fortunes. Standing here today, I can only imagine the sights and sounds of 1850s Manchester. The thundering mills, the crowded marketplaces, and the smoke and cotton dust in the air. Sometimes I wish I could step back in time and experience one of those mill days, or walk through the Royal Exchange when it was buzzing with traders, even just for a single day. For now, this reconstruction is as close as I can get to that experience. Through these images and narratives, we get a glimpse of what it was like to be there when Manchester was truly Cottonopolis, the workshop of the world. These streets and buildings have changed, and the age of cotton mills has long passed, but their legacy continues to shape the modern city and our modern world. If there's another historic city or moment in time you'd like to see brought to life in a future video, let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching and coming along on this trip back to industrial Victorian Manchester.